The other day, I was praying in the park, something I often do after I go on a jog. I find a nice spot under a tree where I can talk to God and I enjoy the silence. This particular morning was a bit chilly, and as I was sitting under the tree, I began to think, man, this would be a good day for a nice hot bowl of soup. Now, I'm not sure what your favorite soup is, but mine is a nice squash soup with a slice of sourdough and a sharp cheddar cheese. And as I was thinking about the soup, I began to realize how grateful I was to have it. I began to think of all the people in this world who don't have access to any soup at all, much less their favorite one. And I began to think of how fortunate and privileged I am to have this soup in my life. I think these moments of gratitude are very important, not only because it can lead to more happiness in your own life, but because gratitude is an emotion that helps us empathize with others and discern what basic human rights should be. Every culture on earth has soup, and while those soups may be different from one another, the concept of stuff in broth is universal. In West Africa, they have egusi soup, made from a type of melon seed and served with yams or plantains. In Asia, they have ramen, pho, and miso soup. Europe has a wide variety of soups and stews, from cabbage soup to lamb stew. The Middle East has creamy chicken soups and chunky lentil soups, and in Latin America, they have sanocho and locro. Soup is standard, it is basic, it is a staple food, and it is found everywhere on earth. The desire for a bowl of soup when one is feeling bad is pretty universal. It is a food capable of healing both our bodies and our souls. And as I was sitting in the park, I realized that this is what I believe the basic standard of living should be. That one of the basic standards for human rights and human dignity is that everyone should have access to their favorite soup. That your favorite soup should not be a privilege, but a right. So I did what any idiot content creator such as myself would do in that situation. I proposed the question to my online audience. Now, my audience tends to lean left, so I thought, surely this isn't a controversial take. You'd think after having 5 years of having a sizable platform, I would have learned my lesson, but apparently I have not. Immediately, everyone got up in arms that I dare say everyone deserves access to their favorite soup. The comments immediately descended into a list of all the bad people in this world that my audience thought should not be worthy of soup. What about the rapists, the pedophiles, the serial killers? What about the heroin dealers and the lazy people and the people from this country or from that country? The video then started to gain traction and began to get pushed to more conservative viewers. What about the transgenders? What about the gang members? What about terrorists? And I began to realize that if you combined all the people that someone thought shouldn't have soup, there's no one who deserved soup at all. This is the fundamental difference between a privilege and a right. A privilege is something that is conditional. It is something that can be taken from you due to your identity or your behavior. Who deserves what privileges are up for debate? One might argue, for example, that a criminal, due to their behavior, no longer has the privilege of their freedom. One might also argue that someone who does something good should be rewarded with extra privileges, like a raise or a special trip or a celebration in their honor. Privileges are a series of punishments and rewards that we as a society decide. Some are just, others are not, especially when those privileges are decided by something arbitrary and unchanging, like someone's race, gender, or sexuality. But rights are things that human beings should have based purely and exclusively on the fact that they are alive. It is a standard through which we measure justice. Anything that falls above that standard is either a privilege or a good deed, and everything that falls below it is either a disadvantage or a crime. And in my opinion, the statement, everyone deserves access to their favorite soup, is a wonderful standard to set. Something that happens quite often when discussing issues of human rights and justice is that people will dehumanize others, and that is an urge we must control. At its worst, it results in basic rights and dignities being taken from entire people groups. At best, it removes us from the reality that we are all capable of monstrous things under the right circumstances. Dehumanization can cause a world leader to deny food and water to an entire population, but can also lead us to believe that the bad guys are monsters we are incapable of becoming. By giving people their favorite soup, we are forced to acknowledge that every human has needs, no matter their behavior, and that those needs must be met for their ongoing survival. Once we start dehumanizing others, we begin to make excuses for why they should be denied human rights. But why do I include favorite in that description? It can seem a bit unnerving, after all, to think of terrible people eating their favorite soup. There are certainly people in this world who I personally don't like thinking about having the sort of comfort that soup provides. However, I think that people don't just deserve soup, but deserve soup that is healthy, safe, nutritious, tasty, and culturally significant. I use favorite as a shorthand for this concept. People's food should not include dangerous chemicals or inedible objects. It should not be torturously bland. It should provide them with the nutrients they need to survive. It should be made of ingredients that they are not allergic to, and Jewish and Muslim people should not be forced to eat foods that are not kosher or halal. So often, when discussing human rights, we spend more time focusing on preventing certain people from getting them than we do on making sure everyone else does get them. When we talk about how bad people, how whatever one might describe them, don't deserve access to soup, then the conversation stops being about getting everyone soup and more about stopping bad people from getting soup. We focus more on punitive punishments than we do on actively trying to ensure that people get what they need. And this isn't to say that bad people don't sometimes need to be separated from society, or that they should simply be allowed to keep doing harm. It's about turning our mindset away from our punitive justice system and towards a redemptive justice system that allows people to be held accountable and get the skills they need to not reoffend. Punitive justice tends to embolden fascistic and violent criminals, and it makes people who have committed crimes of desperation, like petty theft or drug crimes, more likely to reoffend. We also tend to get it wrong a great deal of the time, with people of color more likely to be incarcerated unjustly than their white counterparts. This isn't working, and we need to find a new way forward. The soup question allows us to examine our biases, find our humanity, and creatively discover new forms of justice that lead to a more well-adjusted society. Because once we can agree that everyone deserves their favorite soup, we can start moving on to bigger questions. Like, why don't we all have soup already? How do we make sure that the people who pick the ingredients for our soup are paid fairly? Why are all our soups filled with chemicals and ingredients that cause our bodies harm? Who is controlling the production of soup? And why are they being paid more than the people who do the hard work of creating the soup? So today I'd like you to contemplate a world where everyone has access to their favorite soup, and ways that we can create that world. Ask yourself the hard questions, and ask them of each other. Saint Teresa said, "We are the hands of Christ on earth." And even if you're not a Christian, I think it's a sentiment most people can agree with. It is up to us to create the world we want to see, to be that change. And that can be as small as giving someone who needs it a bowl of their favorite soup.